There was a time when your dog always looked to you first before doing anything. Before moving, before deciding, before reacting to the environment around them. That check-in happened so naturally you probably never noticed it. And that's why it's easy to miss when it starts to disappear. At first, the change is almost invisible. Your dog still listens, still responds, and still stays close. But something small begins to shift in the order of how they process the world. And that order is what defines behavior. Now, instead of checking in with you first, your dog begins to glance outward before referencing you. It might be a quick look at the environment or a brief pause before moving. It doesn't look like disobedience. But it feels slightly different. That feeling is important, because it's often the first sign that alignment is starting to weaken. Your dog is no longer anchored to you as the primary point of reference. They are beginning to balance your presence against everything else around them. And that balance changes how decisions are made. When alignment is strong, your dog moves with you without needing to think about it. Their actions flow directly from your signals. There is no delay, no comparison, no hesitation. And that's what creates consistency. But when your dog stops checking in first, that automatic flow is interrupted. Now there is a small space before action begins. In that space, your dog is evaluating something else. And evaluation always introduces variation. At first, nothing appears broken. Your dog still follows commands and still responds when it matters. But the structure behind those responses has changed. And structure is what determines reliability. Now you may start to notice your dog moving ahead slightly more than before. They don't immediately adjust to your direction. Instead, they continue briefly before correcting themselves. And that delay is part of the same shift. This change becomes more noticeable in environments with more stimulation. Your dog becomes more aware of what's happening around them. They begin to process external input before checking in with you. And that changes how quickly they respond. The check-in that used to happen automatically is now delayed. It still happens, but it comes after something else. That means your influence is no longer first in the sequence. And sequence defines behavior more than intention. Now take a moment to think about recall. When you call your dog, you are asking them to immediately shift their attention back to you. That only works when you are their first point of reference. Without that, the response becomes slower. Your dog hears you, but something else is processed first. It might be movement, sound, or simply their own focus. That delay may only last a second. But that second changes distance, timing, and outcome. This is why recall begins to feel inconsistent over time. Not because your dog doesn't understand the command, but because your signal is no longer being processed first. And that changes how reliable it feels. Now the same pattern spreads into everyday movement. Your dog starts making small decisions independently. They move without referencing you as often. And they begin to rely more on their own assessment of the environment. That independence doesn't look dramatic at first. It feels like confidence or curiosity. But underneath, it is a shift away from alignment. And that shift changes everything over time. Because when your dog stops checking in first, they stop adjusting early. Instead of aligning before acting, they correct after they've already moved. And that creates a delay in coordination. That delay is what introduces hesitation into behavior. Your dog is no longer moving smoothly from one action to the next. There are small pauses, small checks, and small adjustments. And those moments begin to accumulate. Over time, those small moments form a pattern. Your dog becomes more environment-focused and less reference-focused. They begin to rely on what they see and feel in the moment. And your role becomes slightly reduced. Not removed, but delayed. And delay is enough to change outcomes. Because when your signal is delayed, other inputs have time to compete. The environment becomes more engaging. Movement becomes more important. And your dog begins to balance multiple priorities. That balance is what creates inconsistency. Your dog is no longer operating from a single clear reference point. They are choosing between options. And choice introduces variation every time. Now think about how often this happens throughout the day. Small decisions, small movements, small moments of hesitation. Each one seems insignificant on its own. But together, they form a pattern. And that pattern becomes your dog's new normal. What used to be automatic alignment becomes conditional response. And that's where reliability begins to fade. The most important part of this is that it doesn't happen suddenly. There is no clear moment where everything changes. It builds slowly, through repetition of small sequence shifts. And that's why it's so easy to miss. But once you see it, it becomes obvious. You start to notice the order of events instead of just the behavior itself. You see the pause before the movement. the glance before the response. And those details tell you everything. Because behavior is not just what your dog does, it's how they arrive at doing it. And when that process changes, everything built on it changes too. What most people focus on is the outcome. Whether the dog listens or not. But the outcome is only the final step in a much larger sequence. And that sequence is where the real story is happening. Now your dog is moving through the world with a slightly different internal structure. They are referencing outward before inward. They are evaluating before aligning. And they are deciding before responding. That shift is subtle, but it is powerful. Because once it becomes consistent, it defines how your dog behaves in every situation. Not just when you give a command. And that's why this matters. Because when your dog stops checking in with you first, it's not just a behavior change. It's a process change. And process is what determines everything that follows. That's why noticing it early is so important. Not because something is wrong, but because something has shifted. And once you understand that shift, the behavior stops feeling random. It starts to make sense. Because every hesitation, every delay, every small moment of independence follows the same pattern. And every pattern begins with a single change in sequence.